Every year, we see premeds make the same avoidable mistakes. Mistakes that cost them an acceptance, a specialty, or years of their life they didn't need to lose. We're answering the real questions behind those mistakes today, the ones we get asked again and again. Dr. Jubal, medschoolinsiders.com. How do I handle a failing grade without it tanking my med school chances? First of all, you have to retake the course, but don't think that because you failed this course in the past that now you can only get a C. You can get an A. You can be that student. Again, going back to the study strategies, the test-taking tactics, and the content knowledge, those three things when optimized, you would be shocked at how you can turn things around. We have some very black and white from low to very high-performing students that by following these protocols can completely change things around. Number two, you want to have a positive upward trajectory with your overall GPA. So if you started college at a lower GPA and you then were hitting 4.0s, even if your final GPA is not as high, that positive trend is very meaningful versus you starting off at a 4.0 and then dipping and then going down to 3s, right? So you want to have that positive trend, not the negative trend. And finally, if your GPA is not where it needs to be, focus on the MCAT because it needs to counter a weaker GPA. When exactly should an undergraduate begin preparing their application for medical school to ensure they can enter medical school shortly after graduation? How many hours of clinical work and volunteering experience should an individual gain to have a competitive application? Ideally, you're beginning your application at the very beginning of freshman year. Not because you need to be pre-med intense or a gun or anything, but because the strongest applications are built over time. They're not deciding halfway through college that they want to be pre-med. In that case, you're taking one or more gap years, right? So if you want to enter med school shortly after graduation, meaning you take no gap year, that means that you have to submit your application June at the end of your junior year because applying to medical school is a 1-year process. So then during senior year, you're essentially doing your interviews and etc. So that is now less common. Only about a quarter of students who actually go into medical school are going straight through with no gap year. 3/4 are taking 1 or more gap years before getting into med school because it is so competitive now. When I got into medical school 15 years ago, it was around 45% of students that were going straight through, and now it's only 25% of students. So to be able to apply straight through with no gap year, you need to have your MCAT, your GPA, your various experiences, your research, your letters, your personal statement, everything should be dialed in, and you just have less margin for error. You can't wait and say, okay, I can kind of wing this. You really need to be intentional from day one. When should I start thinking about which specialty to choose? I think a lot of premeds put unnecessary pressure on themselves to figure this out while they're premeds. I don't think you need to do that. I think that it doesn't hurt to think about the kind of doctor you want to be and what your future life could look like as a way to motivate you and push you towards those outcomes, but don't be so set in stone. I actually was too set in stone. I believed that I was going to be a pediatric gastroenterologist because the February of my freshman year at UCLA, I got diagnosed. I was hospitalized. I lost 40 pounds. I was 128 pounds on a 6'1" frame, just to give you an idea of how sickly I was. It was not good. It was an inflammatory bowel disease. I had my first ever symptoms, first ever flare, got hospitalized, was out of school for 2 weeks, and it drove me to pursue medicine, and it made me want to be a pediatric gastroenterologist. I was so focused on that. I did research in GI, I shadowed GI doctors, I was all about GI. And then when I got to med school and I got even more exposure, only then did I realize that it wasn't for me. Now that wasn't necessarily a bad thing because it gave me a why and it allowed me to push forward, right? With so much intensity and vigor and energy, which is helpful, but sometimes it can add unnecessary stress to students where they feel like they need to figure everything out while they're pre-med. And that's not true. What I would instead suggest is that you have a loose idea of what you like and don't like, but you maintain an open mind to say, I want to be more or less procedural. I knew I wanted to be procedural even as a college student, which is why GI allows for procedures. But what I would urge the premeds to consider is that you should maintain optionality. Always get into the best medical school that you possibly can because that will maintain full optionality. You could end up like me, where I was set on Peds GI, and there is a chance, in fact, 72% of medical students change their mind about their specialty. So there's a significant chance that you may change your mind and want to pursue something else. And now if you're at a certain program that is not as strong as what you could have done, that can actually close doors, where it's going to be much more challenging to actually match into that specialty for residency. We often get the same questions over and over in the comments. Should I do a post-bac? Is my GPA good enough? Should I apply broad or narrow? And the honest answer is always the same. It depends on your goals, your numbers, your story. A comment can't give you that, a real conversation can. Inside our school community, every week you're in a small group with me or one of our doctors with real AdCom experience. You get your questions answered directly. Not a generic answer written for everybody, an answer built around your actual application. Join a free trial to access our first sessions at no cost. Plus, lock in the early bird rate if you like what you see. Link in the description. When a pre-med or med student is going through a period of burnout, lack of motivation, low confidence, and self-doubt, what would you recommend as something to do to overcome that? What do you think is the right question to ask in a situation like this? This is good. I like this question a lot. I think the first question to ask is, are you actually burned out, or are you just trying to force yourself down a path you chose previously that's no longer aligned with where you want to go? And it's okay to change your mind about things. You don't have to hold yourself to some decision you made when you were a teenager, right? So let's walk through some practical steps here. I think first you want to stabilize the basics. So again, those 3 pillars of sleep, exercise, and nutrition, those are going to be key. Also social connection, because sometimes we get isolated and that can actually make things a lot worse. I find for myself, focusing on those 3 pillars is actually going to solve 95% of issues. Sleep is the main one for me. Exercise, I've now been calibrated where if I don't exercise regularly, my mood suffers. So I'm so strongly rewarded and reinforced by this feedback loop to exercise consistently. Number 2, I want you to connect with your why, but you have to be honest when you do this. So not the polished, I'm going to tell a doctor, or I'm going to tell the AdCom, or in my personal statement, the reason why, but what's the real reason? Like underneath it, when you journal to yourself and no one else is looking, do you still want the responsibility, the sacrifice, the day-to-day reality of being a physician and what it takes to get there? And third, when you're feeling overwhelmed, remember that you don't have to handle this whole overwhelming mass of stress. You just need to chip away at it. What's the saying? What's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time, something like that. So focus on the next controllable, discrete step you can focus on. Because when you look at the entire picture, the entire mountain, it gets overwhelming. But if you think about what's the next thing I can do today, or the next day, or in the next 30 days, that's gonna move things forward or make my life better, that's where you should focus all of your attention and energy. Now, of course, disclaimer, if the symptoms are severe, persistent, there's hopelessness, depression, anhedonia, where you lose interest in things that you normally enjoy, thoughts of self-harm, etc. That's not gonna be addressed necessarily by these. I would say you wanna get professional support immediately. In regards to MCAT prep, how long should you spend reviewing course material, and how long should you spend practicing questions? It's boring, but this is gonna get you a 99th percentile MCAT score. Most students spend too much time at the beginning focusing on content review, and too much time at the end on practice questions. You actually wanna have more of a balance. Primarily actually pulling more of your practice questions and practice tests earlier on and adding more volume. So this is because of the testing effect. Practice questions and practice tests are not simply there to see how well you're doing and help you fine-tune little tweaks in your test-taking strategies and such. They're valuable for that, but what they can actually do when used properly is teach you a lot of the information that you need to know. And this goes back to the 3 pillars: content knowledge, study strategies, test-taking skills. We only scratched the surface here. On our Med School Insiders Blueprint channel, I go deeper into these exact questions, plus many more, all based on what you submitted. Watch the full video right up here.